My name is Sophia, and I grew up in a small town in Ohio where everyone seemed to know your name, except they never really knew you. At least, that's how I felt. In my house, my brother Brad was the golden child. He played football, had decent grades, and made my dad beam with pride every time he walked into a room. Me, I was the quiet one in the corner, always reading, always listening, rarely noticed. My dad barely looked at me unless it was to criticize something, my clothes, my hair, the way I spoke too softly. My mom wasn't cruel, just absent. Emotionally checked out, like she was surviving more than living. At school, things weren't much better. I wasn't popular, or pretty in the way girls in teen magazines were. I wore hand-me-downs that didn't fit quite right. Kids ignored me or laughed at me. Teachers forgot I was even in the room. Once, in sophomore year, a teacher called me by the wrong name for 6 months, and I was too scared to correct him. I used to come home and write stories, long, winding tales where the quiet girl saves the world and everyone finally sees her. But even those notebooks stayed hidden under my bed, like they weren't worth showing anyone. There was a time I really started to believe what they all seemed to think, that I was nothing, that I would never be anything. And for a long while, I didn't even try to prove them wrong. It happened one Friday night during sophomore year. Our school put on a play. I only went because my friend begged me to come, but the moment the curtain rose, I was hooked. There was something magical about it. The lights, the way the actors transformed into someone else, the way people in the audience laughed, gasped, even cried, and I thought, maybe I could do that too. That night I went home and stood in front of the mirror practicing lines I made up on the spot. For the first time, I didn't hate what I saw. For the first time, I saw someone with a spark. I worked up the courage to tell my dad I wanted to try acting. He laughed. Literally laughed. Acting? You think someone like you is going to end up on a screen? Be serious, Sophia. Brad chimed in too. You need a face for TV, Soph. Maybe try radio. They laughed at me like it was a joke. And maybe, to them, it was. But to me, it wasn't. I asked if I could take a summer theater class at the community center. It was only $200, but Dad shut it down instantly. I'm not wasting money on something that'll never go anywhere, he said. So, I saved up. I took babysitting jobs, walked dogs, even cleaned up at the local diner for tips. It took me months, but I finally had enough to sign up for that class. I still remember the first day I walked into that tiny theater. It smelled like old carpet and paint. There were only 6 other students, but to me, it was heaven. Because for once, I wasn't invisible. I was seen. The day after graduation, I packed my life into one beat-up suitcase and bought a one-way bus ticket to Los Angeles. No goodbye party, no hugs. Just a post-it from my dad on the kitchen table. Don't call us asking for money. I was scared out of my mind. I had no job lined up, no real plan, just a stubborn belief that staying in Ohio would slowly kill me. I'd rather fail trying than rot in silence. My first nights in LA were rough. I slept on the couch of a girl I'd met online, split ramen noodles for dinner, and walked everywhere because I couldn't afford a bus pass. But every day I woke up with purpose. I was there, in the city where dreams happen. Even if mine felt a million miles away. I started taking free acting workshops at libraries, community centers, anywhere I could. I worked odd jobs, barista, dog walker, handing out flyers in a sandwich costume on Hollywood Boulevard. I said yes to everything. I auditioned for student films, unpaid plays, background roles. 99 out of 100 times I got a no, but that one yes? It kept me going. I remember getting cast as Waitress 2 in a low-budget web series. It was 3 lines, but I practiced those lines in front of the mirror for days. And when I stood in front of that camera for the first time, I didn't feel like nothing anymore. I felt home. That small web series didn't make headlines, but someone important happened to see it. A casting assistant for a local cable show emailed me. They needed a young woman for a small, recurring role, just a few scenes each episode, but it paid. Actually paid. I was shaking when I walked into the studio for the first time. Everything felt surreal. Makeup chairs, script tables, people calling me Miss Sophia. I kept waiting for someone to tell me I didn't belong there, but no one did. My character was a sarcastic retail worker in a sitcom called Second Chances. I barely had 5 lines per episode, but I made them count. I worked like every line could be my last. A few weeks after it aired, I got a text from a girl I went to high school with. "OMG, I saw you on TV? You're actually good?" Then another message, and another. Even my mom called. "Your dad saw you on the show." He didn't say much, but he didn't change the channel. It was the smallest thing, but it meant everything. I started getting more callbacks. A drama series. A guest role on a crime show. Nothing huge, but steady work. For the first time in my life, I was paying rent doing the thing I loved. One night, I walked past a bar, and through the window I saw myself on TV. Nobody inside noticed. But I did. I stood there, hands in my pockets, and smiled like a fool. Because in that moment, I wasn't the quiet girl anymore. I was someone. Success, I learned, doesn't come with peace. It comes with pressure. Every job brought new expectations. Learn the lines, hit the marks, look perfect, be available, be grateful. Behind every smile on set was a woman like me, exhausted, anxious, trying to prove she belonged. I developed a thick skin, but there were nights I came home and just sat on the floor, still in makeup, still in costume, crying quietly into a takeout box. The loneliest part of rising is that you don't always know who's climbing with you, and who's watching, waiting for you to fall. I was invited back home for Brad's engagement party. I hadn't seen him in years. I almost didn't go, but something in me needed closure. Or maybe revenge. When I walked in, everyone looked twice. I wasn't the awkward, quiet girl anymore. I was confident, composed. I wore a navy dress I'd bought with my first acting paycheck. Brad hugged me like we were close, then leaned in and whispered, "Still playing pretend for a living?" I froze. For a second, I was 16 again, standing in the kitchen being mocked. But this time, I didn't shrink. I smiled and said, "Yeah, and now people pay to watch it." But he didn't laugh. That night, I stood in the backyard while people drank and laughed. I looked up at the sky and whispered to the younger me, "You made it." They don't see it, but I do. You made it. A few months after Brad's engagement party, I got a call that would change everything. An indie director had seen my work in a crime drama. He was casting for a lead role in a limited series called The Quiet Girl, about a woman who grows up overlooked, silenced, and eventually finds her voice in the unlikeliest of ways. He said, "You walked in and it felt like the character had come to life." It was the first time anyone had seen me as more than a supporting actress or a pretty background. He saw me as the center of the story. I poured everything into that role. My childhood pain, the loneliness, the fight to be seen. It wasn't just acting. It was remembering. When the series premiered, it didn't just get attention. It sparked conversations. People wrote essays about it. Women messaged me saying, "That was my life too." Then came the nomination. Emmy, lead actress. I reread the announcement 10 times, thinking they'd made a mistake. But it was real. One night, just before the awards ceremony, my mom called. Her voice was softer than I remembered. She said, "Your dad's been watching all your interviews. He doesn't say much, but he tapes them, every single one. And I'm proud of you, Sophia. I really am." I sat on the floor, phone in hand, and cried harder than I ever had. Not because I needed their validation, but because I'd spent so long thinking I'd never hear those words. That night, I wasn't the girl no one believed in. I was the woman who made them watch. After The Quiet Girl, everything changed. I was getting invited to rooms I'd only dreamed about, producer meetings, magazine covers, talk shows. But I didn't move fast. I moved carefully. I knew how easily things could be taken away. I bought a small house in Santa Monica, nothing flashy, just enough light, space, and peace. For the first time in my life, I had a place that was truly mine. I invited my mom to live with me. She hesitated at first, unsure if she was welcome. But I told her, this house has no judgment, just boundaries. Brad, on the other hand, wasn't doing so well. He'd lost his job in a round of layoffs and moved back in with our parents. The golden boy's shine had faded. One day, I visited home for Thanksgiving. Brad avoided eye contact. Dad looked older, quieter. There was no more smugness, just weariness. After dinner, Dad asked if I could help with some bills. For a moment, the little girl in me flinched, wanting to scream, "Where were you when I needed help?" But I took a deep breath and said, "I'll help. But things are different now. You don't get to tell me who I am anymore." They both nodded. No argument, no snide remarks, just silence. It wasn't about money. It was about power. And I wasn't giving mine away anymore. Sometimes, I still wake up early. Before the city noise, before the emails, before anyone expects anything from me. I sit on my porch with a cup of coffee, watching the sky shift from deep blue to gold. And I think about that girl in Ohio. The one who used to whisper lines to her bedroom mirror, hiding her dreams under the bed. She was never nothing. She just needed time to become someone. Last year, I was invited to speak at a high school back home. When I stepped onto that auditorium stage, I saw 100 faces looking up, some shy, some defiant, all searching for hope. I told them, "You don't have to come from power to become powerful. You don't need applause to know you're worthy. You don't need permission to dream bigger." When I finished, a girl about 16 came up to me, eyes shining. She said, "They tell me I'll never make it either, but now, I think maybe I will." I hugged her tight because I knew that girl. I was that girl. And as I stood there, cameras flashing, reporters calling my name, I realized something. The ones who once said I'd be nothing, they're the ones watching me now, on their couches, in silence, while I speak my truth on national television. So let them watch.